Okay, so I just pulled out this one, just random. And is this kind of what you had in mind? Something like this?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So same start, and then all the same steps. It's kind of leaning back. That's my tilt. And then instead of extending the jaw, so in the normal views, we just kind of tack on that extra 1/3. But you can't really do that in these, either under or over. So I'll put the chin inside because it's now in front of the skull. So that's kind of where I'm thinking that this step translates to. And here's my brow line. Brow line is just really high, but it doesn't change the step. And then we could swing that all the way around, just really lightly. Here's my center line. So brow, center line, chin, and then whatever I do for the perspective of that brow. So the brow is showing you that you're under the head, kind of like this. I want to take what I did here for the brow and then do the same thing for the chin. For the chin, I'm just doing that same ellipse just to make it feel like we're under. Still the smaller ellipse, but the same. And then I always kind of cut that at the back, right where the beginning of the throat would be. So from the chin back, this is all the underplane of your jaw. You have muscles in here that help your jaw to lower, and other things like it raises the floor of your mouth when you swallow. And then you have to make sure you're putting necks this week. So remember, you have to have the neck and the shoulder. Otherwise, it's a little bit bizarre to just have kind of floating heads. So here's my S and my C. That's my neck. And just so everybody remember knows, these are due Wednesday. So I just moved everything to do the same day, this with the quiz. And that was sent out in an email today. Just to be a little extra time. And now the same steps again. So half, these proportions don't change. Half between the brow and the chin is your nose. Half again is your sockets. Half again is your eyes. And then thirds. And then we'll do our pimple. The pimple, hairline, base of the nose, back, put in a little disc, and then cut it halfway, halfway, and that helps us to place the ear. Then we'll put that big rhythm in for your jaw and cheek. I'll do that on this side too. A little bit of the jaw on this side. And then I'll just start working on the features. So here's the keystone. I always work out from this. And then I'm not going to be, and I don't want you to be too concerned in your homework to make it look like a person. I just want you to get good at doing head structure so that maybe you could invent with it. And then we'll worry more about making it look like somebody when we talk about shadow. So here's the socket on this side. And then this is the only part that really changes. When you're underneath the tip of the nose will get really high. So like to me, it looks like almost in line with the eye. So it's like all the way up here. So you just connect that back. And then same steps. Connect that to the keystone. Connect the side down. For the mouth, we want to think about how influential all of the teeth are. So just making that big egg shape or disc. It doesn't go past the cheekbones. And then the chin. And then I'm going to put in some detail for the nose. So it doesn't have to look exactly like her, but I'm going to try to create the septum and the nostrils. So I'm just splitting this bottom plane and creating these loops. The center is the septum, and then we have our nostrils on either side. If you want it and you enjoy trying to develop a likeness, you can try to shape the nose, like make it rounder, but not something you're going to be graded on. The eye socket in the eye. So the corner of the eye lines up with the wing of the nose. The center of the eye lines up with the corner of your mouth. So that looks like it's right there. So that helps me kind of get a feel for how large the eye should be and where. And then see if you can try to, in your own, just design an eye. And it doesn't have to look exactly like her. Just put a top lid and a lower lid.
Professor?
Yeah?
Do you have good examples like these in the, like the finished of what you want to see in the videos?
It should look like the very last video. Just like all homework, it should always try to
Okay.
look exactly like the most recent video.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. And the other eye. You don't have to worry about doing hair. If you want to, you can try it. I would just treat it really simply, almost like you're putting a hat over the person. And then for the lips, same thing. I want to build them off a perspective ring that's consistent with the overall of the view. So I just moved that rhythm with that perspective ring up some. And then I'm just going to design my M and my W. So the M and the W for upper lip, lower lip. And then make sure it wraps back to that. So it goes like this, like that. And I'm not worried about like the wrinkles or anything. You know, you don't have to worry about that. Just, unless you want to try. And then here's my lower lip. I'm just going to make a line that goes with that perspective ring. And then maybe just refine the chin a bit. And that's it. So that's how I would approach a view that's underneath. The only difference was where I put the chin. And then I guess maybe showing a little bit more of the underside of the nose or just pushing that up, but not too much of a difference, I guess.
All right, thank you for the demonstration. Would it be possible to do one from a top view?
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Okay, so this one's, again, very much the same. So again, if you're asking homework, this is what homework should look like. Anybody's confused about what you should be trying to create or how the homework drawing should look, it's not clear in the video. Here's an example. This is what homework should look like.
Oh, one more question. So how would you do the shoulders for that other view that we did? Was it just
The shoulders are just introduced as a tilt. So it'd be this. And if you want, you could just tie them with a C or an S curve. The rest of her lightness is just fat. So it's fat and muscle. And I think that's all maybe a little advanced for us right now, but that's something that we could talk about in a Q&A one day if anybody wanted to cover that material. What we will be going through later is lighting. So these are really important structures or kind of templates to get down so that you guys are capable of moving light shapes and different types of gradations across them. When I do light, I just kind of map in the area where shadow goes and then fill it in. So I think it'll make your lighting really easy if you struggle with it, or it'll give you another way of handling it if you have an issue with light and shadow. I'll just do a little bit of that here, and then we'll go on to a different view. And then if anybody is interested in painting digitally, I think this is, or just however, I always would draw in like a full structure before I would start to paint, just so I knew where planes were, things that I had to show. And then there's a lot of light up here. Or shadow. Okay, so let's do a top view. Same start. There's a tilt. There's the jaw. Harder to see the neck in this one, so maybe just kind of guess. Shoulder. Seeing the shoulders, I think, will really help for this one. Maybe you could even try to show that at the top of a box for the shoulder on this, just because it helps with the view. Where's the brow? Really low. And then from brow, there's like hairline, center, and then same proportions. Halves and thirds. Hairline, temple, I don't really see too much on that side. Back of the head, the nose, big disc, split it. When you're above, then the ear is always above the nose or above the brow. And I'm doing a little bit better of a jaw. Here's my cheek. Do a cheek on the other side. Your neck's a little bit slighter. And then let's put this on a different layer so that if anybody has questions about this build-up, we can just come back and undo the layers. So that's your basic lay-in, and now we're going to work on the features. So next I'm going to do the keystone in the brow, just like I started on the other one. So here's my keystone. My brow is just going to get built from that perspective line. So here's my kind of my eyeglass shape for the socket. Same on both sides. And then difference is that if you're above looking down, the tip of the nose goes below the proportion line. So I see that like maybe here. So I'm kind of guessing based on where I see the lips, and once I get it, then I'll just draw it back up. And then we connect all the same points, the keystone to the tip or the end of the nose, the sides. One thing to remember is this has to go away, this line. So I always see that all converge, so be careful. Always want to push this away. And then maybe to push the point for the view, I'll put the eyes kind of tucked behind the upper part of the socket so they feel overlapped. And then we're going to start to develop the mouth. This is the cheek. The mouth is going to start right here. So it's going to make my big disc. Chin is under that. I'm trying to overlap it behind. And then if we put in the mouth, there's really not much to see. See like a little bit of the M. Don't see much of the upper lip, but the mouth has to go across the perspective. So it has to go that way. And so we'll just design a little M. Corner of the mouth always ends up with the center of the eye. So you can double check those points. And then lower lip, see more of, because it sticks out, but not a lot. Let's put in some eyelids. These are also going to go this way with the perspective. So the most important thing for these views is just keeping your perspectives consistent. Like I always see people that do this view when they're starting out, but then they still want to show under the nose. And that starts to confuse too many perspectives. So just be sure if you're showing above, you're above everything. And the eyebrows are kind of overlapping the eyes. I see some of the eye, the pupil and the iris, but not really. So I'll put on my lower lid now. Same thing on this one, put in the lower lid. Doesn't matter. I usually have to put in the pupil or the iris first because it's too hard to just put it in there when you already have everything. And again, the goal for this week is not to create likeness. That's its own lecture. And we don't really have with this much tools or the information to do a honest and good job with assessing likeness. So focus more on the basic structure. If you can kind of make it look like them and that's exciting to you, then great. But it's not how you're being graded. The grade is more about just kind of perspective, making sure your perspective is reading. We can do the same thing again, put some light and shadow on this one like we did the other one, just so you can see how it develops. So for homework, don't do this, even though I'm just having fun doing it myself, because there's going to be a week where we just do this on as a homework assignment. So don't have to worry too much about getting it right now. So this would be my starting point if I wanted to get something with likeness, and then I would start to make adjustments. So it's not something, again, I'm focused on either, just like you guys shouldn't be. Okay, so that's over. So that's under and over. So camera is under in this one. I would treat all poses like this the same. The only trick was just putting the chin inside as opposed to on the outside of the basic skull shape. And then this one was over. And no trick here, just making sure that you put the tip of the nose below the proportion line. Okay. Is that all right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay. So I think Jeannie has some to look at, so I'll grab those real fast. Please don't do shading. Like I said, we're gonna have our own week for that. Jeannie, are there any specific ones in here that you want looked at, or is it okay just to choose a random page? Just so I know how to help you the easiest.
There were some I had more trouble with than others, like the from above. I had some trouble with that. I noticed that the more I did it, the easier it got.
Okay, so there's like a 4, 5, 6, and 7. Which one do you want me to look at?
I think numbers. Well, actually, I think number 4, because this is the only time I drew someone from behind.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's grab this one from Jeannie and we'll do a view of the head from behind. And that way, if you guys are working on your own, we can hopefully give you some extra help here. There's some tricks to working on stuff, heads from behind. There isn't a whole lot, I don't think, about it in our lecture that we did together. So this is a good opportunity to give a little bit more detail. All right, so let's do this. So I think that for doing these assignments, it's better to show all of your work or your lines, as long as it doesn't get too confusing or busy, because it's how I know to help you, right? By seeing some of the decisions that you made, or so I just leave everything in. If you feel like it's getting too busy for you when you're doing your homework, then just try using a lighter touch at the beginning, or try using colored pencils and using a lighter colored pencil to start. I think that's a helpful strategy if you're drawing them traditionally. Okay, so for a back view, I treat it the same way as all the other ones to start. I just do a head, a ball, and then set up the view with the chin. So you could still do the whole rotation. The tilt here is straight up and down. This is a back 3/4. So I'm gonna do the 3/4 shape. And then to make it feel like a back view, I just bring the jaw in front of the ball. And it looks like you did that. So that's this line. That works really well. That's good. And then it's going to be hard to see proportions, but maybe I can guess that the brows here, and then that would put the nose there. And I could use the same proportions, half, half, thirds. And maybe I don't see anything there, but like yours, but it'll help me maybe design the look of the profile. The other thing I want from this is wherever the base of the nose is also equal to the bottom of the skull. So I'm gonna take this and send it back. And then this is how I know where to put the shelf that you made in your drawing. So that looks nice. When I'm drawing the back of the head, I also square it. And the back of your skull is a lot squarer. So it's also a thing that just kind of helps make this feel a little different or separate. So I just kind of make this specific area feel a little bit more boxy. That doesn't match the perspective. And then from here, I'll do the same thing you did, but my focus on the neck is to push it forward more. So give it more of an angle. So when I put my cylinder, it still feels like there's the energy or lean from the spine. So it kind of pushes the head. And then we're going to shorten the neck just a bit. That's the only thing that feels a little off to me is just the length of the neck. Do our shoulder. Shoulder is really important for the back. And then I'm going to put in some landmarks. So here's the 7th cervical. And then it would be useful maybe to even have your shoulder blade. Just kind of think about where that might be. You don't have to do the whole rib cage, but I'm going to put in just the top of it. And then back to our head up here. I'm going to do the disc. So hairline, wherever the back of the head is. And I'll judge that just by wherever I put the shelf for this one. I want it just to go to here, not the other way. And the nose, and then wherever the temple is. So that's probably pretty close to the front. And yours is pretty good. I think it maybe just got too small. It could fill up more of that area. And then this tells me a couple things I did wrong. I put the jaw too far back. So my jaw's going to come forward to here. And I made that line really early, so it's good that I have a chance to correct it. Let's get rid of it now. And then the ear. So I'll do something a little bit different from the ear in the back. You don't have to do this, but it really helps me, is that our ear sits on a little stem, like almost like a bucket. And I think this helps show back view because it's not something we see in the front. So I'll use the bucket, and the bucket goes here. It's just kind of an outgrowth of the cartilage as it develops. And then the ear from the back just looks like an S curve. So I put an S like this on top of the bucket. And then I flip the top and the bottom. So at the top, I'll take a line and just go like this, and then the bottom a line and go like that. So here's the first. So it feels like we're seen inside of this part of the ear. And then for the bottom, it goes up to the stem. And your ear is kind of this weird twisting cartilage or S curve. And we really get a chance to see that from the back. So I'll do that here too. Here's my S. And then flip them. And then I use the bucket to kind of approximate how much you're seeing. And then from here, I could do the same thing, just get my cheek, drop that down from the top to the chin. Maybe a more advanced thing that you could do is to show, this, the canopy or the underplane of the jaw. But from this view, it looks very triangular, but it's a great overlap. So I kind of put it here, just like a triangle. This goes to the underside of your jaw, and that's how it transitions the jaw into the neck. And you did a good job of it, like right here. And what I'm trying to use that to show is just like a landscape that you have this, and this is behind, and this is behind that. Try to encourage that perspective read. And that's mostly it. I mean, there's not a whole lot else I could do, but I do occasionally carve into the front plane. And it's always just, our profile is just asymmetrical. Comes out, then back, then out, then back, then out, then back, then out, then back. So sometimes if I think I can see any of these, I'll just do this design. And it might be exaggeration for this pose, but here's the socket. I just barely pushed in a little bit there, the plane, maybe a little tiny bit of the eye. Maybe I just see like this much of the nose. And I'm going to show you underneath it still because we are under. So I just made a triangle there. Maybe for the mouth, I don't see the denture sphere. I just see like a little shape for the upper lip, maybe just like that much. And then I want to push my mouth back some. I feel like this comes forward too much. Maybe I don't see any of the lower lip, so I'll just leave it like that. And then put a little bit of a chin here and try to overlap it behind the mouth. So these are real exaggerations that I try to do to help people understand that this might be a back view. And oftentimes you might not see them, but like I don't see it in this view, and that's what I'm drawing from. But I wanted to show it just so if you end up working with a similar view and you don't feel satisfied with it, you can try that trick and see if it helps make the read feel a little bit better. So I didn't do anything that you didn't. I just cleaned up maybe the proportion a bit and then pushed the neck to be diagonal. If you want to do anything more, you guys are more advanced and want to add a muscle, adding the shoulders, so your trapezius is a really good way to help this view read too, because your trap or your shoulder muscle that sits on top of your scapula and then goes up here into this little shelf on the back of your head. It's a great overlap. So now you get another shape that's in front of your neck, and now the neck can be in front of, I'm just doing one half of the neck here. We'll leave the other side empty. And then the neck's overlapped by the throat, and then the face is in front of that. So it just helps with that overall. And then another one is you have your muscle that turns your head, that's right behind your ear, that you can feel if you just kind of touch the side of your neck, and that goes down to your sternum. So that would make another overlap that goes all the way down here. So again, pretty advanced, but if you would like to try, this is a good, simple way of just making muscles feel like shapes to help with this view. But that's it, Jeannie. Those are the only things I would add. Is that at all helpful?
Yes, thank you for that.
Are there any others that you'd like to have looked at, or do you feel confident with the rest?
Yeah, the profile and the 3/4 views, the lips on those, I don't know if I'm doing those right. That's on number probably, I think number number 6 would probably be the would probably be a good example to pull up.
And I couldn't hear you that well. Did you say the lips?
Oh, yeah, the lips. The
Okay.
lips from the 3/4 view and the profile view.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, so let's look at this. We want to look at the profile, and then we want to look at 3/4, and we're just gonna kind of study or think about the lips. So let's grab these and move them around. Okay, we'll put this one over here. Let's start with a profile. Profiles are tricky because you don't have a lot to work with in terms of space sometimes. So I'll do a fair bit of exaggerating for these. And let's start. So I'm just going to go through the whole process instead of just detailing the lips, so that if you guys are still struggling and want to see what homework should look like, or are having a hard time following the steps, you get a few more opportunities to see them work through. So here's my head, here's my chin. I'm going to push that neck. This is that little triangle underneath the jaw. If you guys have questions, please feel free just to interrupt too, because I don't really often look at the chat, so too many things to do. So here's my brow. So that's where I think the eyebrow is. Here's my chin. And then we're going to do halves. Half is where the nose is. Half again is where the socket is. Half again is where the eye is. And then thirds. So take this space, 2 lines to create 3 equal divisions. Now I'm going to look for my temple. Wherever you think that the forehead is transitioning into the top of the head, that's your hairline. So that I'm just taking that back of the head, and then wherever the nose is, those are the coordinates I want to find my disc to cut out. So it's going to be a little bit wider on this one because it's profile, and then I'm going to chop it in half. And that halfway is helping me to find where I need to be more precise in my jaw. And so here's a jaw. Remember with the jaw, we want to try to get this line, the back of your mandible, to be the same length as the part of the jaw that moves towards the chin. So I'm always trying to match these two. Doesn't mean that that's the way it always is, but the alternative is I usually see people make this line really short and then a long jaw, and it just throws some of the proportion off. So here's the ear shape. Now we're going to do our cheek. And I think from profile, what I normally imagine the features looking like are triangles. So if you think about the first part, the sockets just look like a big triangle from profile. It's like this. And that's so that the eye is protected. And if you want, you could just kind of tuck a ball in there so you feel like the eyeball is present. But even like if we think about the eye in that space, even your eyelids are pretty triangular from the side. You know, they look like shutters, triangular shutters that can go past the eyeball to protect it. Now the nose, so do the keystone, that goes back, but just to this line. Then the nose is another triangle. And for this one, I started out just barely putting you under. So the only thing I would complain about in this one is trying to make these, even if like mine is just barely curved, then it at least gives some perspective, but it's really hard to get form with just a straight line. So like this one is hardly tweaked at all, but at least it gives you a subtle. And what I'll do with that is show under the nose, and that'll also be a triangle. So this little triangle shape to get under. The corner of the eye lines up with the outside of the nose. So if you want to look for where the nostril would be, it can be in this area. And then for the mouth, it's good to start with this so that you feel the presence of all the teeth and their influence on the face. But then when you build the lips over, it's still triangles. So a triangle shape that comes out. And then if I show underneath, I'm just going to bring a triangle inside the head. And that triangle is an underplane. So I'm saying this is the bottom of that upper lip. The lip ends at the corner of the eye. So that would be the end of the mouth. And then the lower lip, triangle. And then chin. And if it's a man, the chin will come out like this. And then commonly for females, the chin just kind of has a more recessive curve. So that would be the profile. And if we take a look at this one, so first thing, just as a warning on this one, I think it's getting a little too stretched out. So make sure that, I don't know, I'm not sure where this one gets a little bit long, but just make sure that the addition of the chin doesn't add too much. So I usually think of the whole of the head, as primarily the ball, at least 2/3. And so for the addition of the jaw or the chin, I'm really only adding another third or a quarter, but hardly any. The proportion looks right because it's close to half, or a little bit too high, but close. These look good. Third in this space is fine. So that tells me that maybe this just got too long, just the addition of the chin early on. If we just look at the mouth for this one, I'm going to just detail this area. So here's our teeth. The nose is up here, just to give context. So we'd be doing under the nose. This is a nice shape for the philtrum. And then, so one thing I want to make sure I do for this one is start from a perspective ring. So this perspective ring that I'm putting here has to match all of the other perspectives of the head. And it shouldn't be that difficult. And by all, I just mean one, the same one that's everywhere. So whatever you did for your brow line, that perspective should be everywhere. It should be the same here, the same here, because you're drawing on that same surface. The same for your mouth. So I just took whatever I imagined the perspective ring to be and added it to the proportion line for the mouth. And then if I'm underneath this one, I'll start with my M and W. So the lips are, like we talked about in the lecture, an M on top and W on the bottom. So I start from here, the centerpiece, and build that on the ring. So this part's kind of triangular. And then I'll fold this back. And as long as I have that center line, I don't really need to do much here. So this just kind of now pulls around. I like to end the mouth in a little egg. That's what the tendon looks like for your mouth. On this side, there's a little egg. If you want to get fancy with the mouth, we talked about how the lips have planes. So if I take this triangle that's in the middle, you would try to see a top plane on it. So that could be really nominal or thin, but your lips do have a thickness. So sometimes it could be helpful just from the standpoint of trying to think about the form. And then there'd be a similar plane for your lip on the sides. So I just kind of bring that across, and that shows that your lip has a thickness, but then it eventually pulls under. Maybe I don't see it so much on this side. And then for the W, I always start with the middle, and then whatever I do with this line, it's just exactly the same as that perspective ring. So this area here, that middle part to the W, I'm just doing the same as the perspective. So that's my center. And then the shapes inside here are like little commas with tails that go outside. So sometimes it's helpful for me to draw that. As long as you get that middle part to feel like it has the same perspective, that's usually enough. Here's another little comma with the tail. And then for these, you have a top plane and then a bottom plane. And so I always try to show this top-bottom contrast to get the perspective feel for lips. And so I think if you are doing your homework and you want to try this, keep it with like a lower difficulty, and just pick one generic shape for lips and just get comfortable trying to make the perspectives. Later, like I said, you can always come back and try to do different or specific lips. But to learn all the variations of lips while you're trying to get the process and the perspective to work, it's a lot to tackle. So maybe just stick with a generic shape or one type of lips for all of your heads. Get used to that, and then once you're comfortable, then start to branch out and show this person's specific lips. For the underside of the lips, usually there's a hollow here underneath the lower lip. This is because the muscles of the lips kind of fan out in this area. And then that should put you right on top of the chin. So chin will be here. So the biggest thing for you to watch out for in terms of getting more perspective is just turning this into something like that. That'll do most of it for you.
So adding more curves to the separation between the top and bottom lip.
Yeah, that, and also never using straights on the inside of the drawings. That always means like a flat or a kind of a non-perspective surface. So always using some kind of perspective indication, even if you don't think you see it.
Okay.
But you have good starts. Anybody else? Questions or views or things you'd like to have covered?
Could you show the last one you did really quick again?
Thank you for moving the deadline. I was just wondering if we do post it today, would it be possible to get a little bit of early feedback in case we want to resubmit it before Wednesday, or is that not possible?
Oh no, that's what we've been doing for the last hour.
If we submit after the class ends though?
Oh, I can do my best to send you a few thoughts during through email, but it's much harder to create drawings to send.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to just kind of send you a few notes.
Professor?
Yes, sir.
Will today's class session be uploaded by before Wednesday?
I'm sure I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I want to hit the mark on this one.
Anything else, guys, that I could be helpful with?
I also had a question about number 7 that I uploaded, the view from below. I did the proportions a little bit differently than the other drawings because of the view. do you do you stick to the same proportions every time, or do you do that? Because it looked like that's what you do when you have that view, because it looked like everything was like scrunched together.
Yeah. So we did we did one from under here. We could do another one too. And everything is exactly the same in terms of the steps that you would follow. So here, I'll grab yours and just put it up. Do you mean this one?
Yes.
Oops. So it would be the exact same approach as the one we did here. Let's find some more room though. Head, tilt. So what do we do with the chin when we're underneath? It goes up. Whatever your perspective is for your brow, and you need to be thinking more about this because it's happening a little bit in each one where you're ending up creating too straight perspective. Remember, I'm looking for these from the eyebrow, wherever that eyebrow is, to the ear. I would imagine this one, the ear would be pretty low. That's how I get my ellipse. So this ellipse, which is the perspective, is connecting those. And that perspective preliminarily says, this view, this is what I'm seeing. That's what the ellipse tells us. So if you imagine this cylinder, like this is how I'm going to show the underside of the jaw. You could really just use this as a start for the head. So for the neck in this one, I would show that it's maybe stretching. So here, I also want to give it wrapping lines so it feels like it's going in a direction. And the proportion is exactly the same. So if you can find the brow, you can find the chin, you do your same divisions. Half for the nose, half for sockets, half for the eye, thirds. And you can do all of your carry through with the different, finding your disc and all of this. I'm going to carve into my head, which is good because it was a little bit too big. Here's my ear. I'm going to have to bring this neck in.
One question.
Yeah.
Where did you find where the half was to start off, where the proportions were going to be?
Well, I made a brow. That was my perspective ring. And I made that almost at the very top because, I don't have a reference imagery here other than the drawing, but in these types of views, the eyebrow almost touches the very top of the skull. So that was where I set up the brow. It's also this line, just kind of inside the cylinder. And then I arbitrarily placed the chin. I just guessed based on where it is in the drawing. And then from there, that's it. The halfway between them, which is your nose, is just halfway. Is this what you mean?
Yeah, okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
So a disc on this side. I'm going to clean up my jaw. So the reason that this line, it's okay for it to be shorter than this one now is because it's foreshortened. So the proportion is going to be varied. This is my ear. So I'm moving that in. You have to clean up my neck a bit. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter too. There's a shoulder. We can make our cheeks. And then you really have to push the look of the features in these types of poses. They're the only part of the feature that's flush with the face is just the proportion line. But like the tip of the nose, and this one is probably up here, because that might be a lot, but maybe not. I've seen a lot of poses where this tip of the nose is visually higher than the eyes. And so that's going to be the first thing that really is noticeable in this. We're kind of seeing that underplane for the nose. And then it's going to be harder to maybe work through some of this, but I'm still trying to find my keystone. And if it's easier, you can start with that still. And here's a socket. Socket still fits in that same proportion, so that's not going to change. Nothing changes or varies from the overall. The eyes, I'm barely going to see any, so I'll probably just put little balls and kind of tuck them behind. My head still looks a little bit wide, so I thought I could bring this in some. And then for the mouth, do the same thing. Get a disc so that you know how to build on top your shapes. But I bet like this, you're going to have that really intense perspective, just like the eyebrow. Get rid of some of that. Some of my early marks for setting up the shape. And so maybe in this one, we're seeing so much under the upper lip because of the view that now the lips are in front of the nose. So here's underneath that M. Make sure to pull your lips all the way out to the center of the eye. Center of the eye. So we're seeing underneath these. And then whatever that ring is that I'm building them on, do the same thing for the center of the W. So that's shorter, but the same. I'm not going to see too much underneath that because now we're going to have a chin in the way. So in this type of example, I'm almost thinking of the head as a landscape. And I'm just trying to put one thing in front of the next so that it feels like, like this basic principle that you learned about in your 124A. Like if you want something to feel like it's going away, you kind of diminish scale and overlap. That's all I'm doing here. Like the eyes are behind the socket is behind the mouth, and the denture sphere is behind the chin, and so on and so forth. Not much you could probably show in terms of the eyes. Maybe I'll put like the lower lid here, so it's the thing that feels like it's in front. This is the socket, so it's probably darker in here. Let's color in the nose, so we remember we're underneath it. And then I still feel like maybe my head is a little too wide or my ears are too big. So I'm just going to bring them in. Let's bring those ears in. And we can put a light on this guy too. Maybe he's looking up at a light source. trying to thin the sockets a bit. So more and more mine just kind of gets closer to looking like a cylinder. Maybe I could have just started this with a cylinder instead of a ball. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yes. So we draw actual eyebrows with these drawings, or we just make a brow line?
Well, you don't have to. I drew them in so that you could see what it is that I reference when I try to create the brow line. If it's helpful to you, you can, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
Okay, so I uploaded the drawings that I did. Would it be possible for you to look at them and just tell me if there's anything like that needs to be drastically changed?
Yeah.
All right, and I'll when I go back and resubmit them, I'm going to scan them. So I apologize for the low quality photo, but I'm gonna go back and scan them later on.
And then did you put them in the Google folder?
Yeah, they should be in one called Module 3 Head Constructions.
Okay, awesome. I'll look for that. Is there one in particular that you'd like to have looked at? There's out of the 4 files, like first, second, third, fourth.
Let me see. Probably the third from the left or the second from the right.
Okay. Well, I think they look really good. I don't have much in the way of criticism for these at first glance. Let's take a look and see if we can come up with something. Trying to keep all these on the same page too, so that anybody wants the drawings that we do in class, I could send just one JPEG. Any one of these, like 4 that are here, particularly difficult, or are they all ones that you'd like to have studied?
There wasn't one particular I was having trouble with. I just wanted you to look at them to see like if maybe I missed something or didn't see them. But otherwise, they're pretty much finished.
All right, let's take a look at the top right. So the only things I noticed there are really small. So first is, and I think this applies to all of them. So first is when I drop the chin, I try to keep it straight because if I make this part too curved, it has a tendency to warp the face. And if it doesn't warp it, then that's it. That kind of change in a skull has a different ethnic implication, usually. People will study skulls clearly for different ethnicities or what people look like. And that might be something that I think would be too early. So just try to get it, like as soon as you roll off the brow line, this should just be a straight shot, just like a straight plumb line. And here it kind of feels like it starts to go back. And then for the rest, the side plane looks good. Let's take a look at the sockets. Proportions look pretty good. So if you do your temple and you've made your disc and everything, make sure when you're doing your sockets that you bring them almost right up against that. So you don't want to leave too much room. And then you have a good consistent drop for both sides. You have a nice plane. The only thing I notice is the nose, the way the nose enters the socket. So here's our keystone, and the base of the nose is here, tip of the nose is here. The underplane of the nose looks good. When we bring this up here, the tip of the nose to the keystone, this part, so whenever you drop this part from the keystone back, try to match, or come close to what you've done down here. So it can be like a similar angle. I think by way of kind of this being too curved in your drawing, this same line, it brings the eyes a little bit too close together and broadens the thickness of the saddle at the top of the nose. It happens in this guy, where the nose feels a little bit too thick. So I think kind of spacing your eyes, so wherever this lands, that's the corner of your eye. So it's going to put the eye back out here a little bit. And then what happens in our socket is like this part is recessed. So that's all shadow. And then I always think at the top of the eyelid kind of like an 8, or like an infinity logo, kind of like that. And this part's in shadow. Right, so that's the one side of the 8, and then it loops over, and then this part pushes out. That's all bone. So we have like in the eye socket, there's these weird like push and pull. The inside drops back, the outside comes forward. We want to leave enough room here to set that up, even though you don't have to draw this directly right now. On that side. So that'll push the mouth a little bit wider. And then just make sure that for the features, you keep the same view. So it's subtle, and I'm going to be a little bit nitpicky, but I think on your lips, they feel like they kind of face a different direction, and they slide back a little bit from the nose. So just like with Genie, make sure you're doing the curving that proportion line. And then like if it's 3/4, like yours is, what I always try to remember is whatever my symmetry is, this is what I hold in my mind as kind of like the template for what I'm drawing. So that's my lips. And then if I want it to be 3/4, I just plus and minus. So I'm going to show you more of this side, and I'll show you less of that side. So for this one, it would be, round. And then start from your center. Give more on this side, and then less here. Same thing, center, more, and then half as much. So I put that here. It can be helpful too, like if you're able to find the nose, which you clearly are, to from the bottom, do your philtrum shape. You can do it lightly too, just like wherever the septum ends, the centerpiece, the cartilage in the nose. It's almost like that's casting a shadow, and that's where you get this shape. The reason you get that shape is because skin is pulled up on either side near your nostrils, and so this is almost like created by way of a sag. But that helps me bridge the nose into the mouth, because that form is always such a great connector. So we could do that as a way just to kind of help us find. And then my M. There's always like this trapezoid shape that's under the lower lip on top of the chin. And then if this is a male character, we could push that chin out more. If it's a female character, then I would underplay that. Disc, your ear looks good. Maybe you could give, oh, this one just needs a clear jaw. Maybe I'm not done with that one. I didn't really notice it, to be honest. So I started looking. Here's the cheek. And then you're doing a good job with the necks. This one I think is really well done. It's still, get the eyes still kind of sneak in a little bit, but the drop down for the nose feels better. This one feels too consistently thick, so maybe like thinning the top of the nose in this one would help. That way it gets a little bit of like that narrow to thick at the bottom. But that's it. I mean, really the nose and then not keeping these features too straight would be my biggest warning at this stage. So if I draw the nose on this guy, just as a way to correct it, let's move it over. And we're just focusing on that area. So brow, this is nose, half, half, keystone, sockets. This is just drawing the sockets. I haven't done the nose yet. Here's the tip of the nose, and maybe you could find that to be a little bit more narrowed. And see if you can match, like if you're looking at a reference of someone, just the length of the nose there at the end, and see if it's different from the base. These are almost very similar in some. And then from here, get my underplane, another little trapezoid shape. And then when I'm starting these, what I'm thinking about for this part is the nasal saddle, and that's really narrow for most people. So that starts narrow to broad, and that's going to come down to the end. So here's the top of the nose. And then on this, I'm just going to do the same line. So from here, down, here, down. I might have done it more front or more straight on than yours. So there's my whole nose. This is the side, the top, the other side. And now I know this is where this corner of the eye is, corner of the eye. So I'm pushing my shape over for the eyeballs to make our infinity logo. Tuck that eye in there. So on this one, I think it's just spacing the eyes to match the nose and the sockets a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
There's just one, as I'm looking at them, there's one specifically, I was having trouble with the nose, and I believe it was on, and this is the last one, so if anyone else has ones that they want to go through, thank you for your patience. But it's on the second from the left, or the second from the left image in the Google Drive folders.
Second from the left, okay. And then which one on this page?
On the top middle one. I think originally I was trying to go for like it was, yeah, the model had his face turned in a way that there was like a very slight amount of the other side of his face showing. And I was having trouble because of that. Because I was trying to show a little bit of the other side of his face, but like it was like almost profile, but not quite.
Okay. Okay, do you mean this one?
Yeah, that one.
So I'm just kind of copying your decisions, showing it from above and then the turn and all that to get it set up. So here's my brow, I'm above. Here's my center line. It's really close to the other side, like you said. So I'm gonna do my half, half, half. So first half nose, second half sockets, third half eyes. 2 lines to create 3 equal spaces from the nose to the chin. That's my lips and my chin. Here's my disc. We're gonna split it now. That gives me my ear and my jaw and my cheek, my keystone. Let's make our sockets here. And so I would do these just kind of one line to show that they're going back in space. You could do a uniform line for both if you want. And then the big difference here, I think, is the keystone gets really wide, so I would narrow it. I think you have a tendency to make that broader. So I would maybe just rein it in a little bit and see if you can start it out smaller, and then if it requires, you can always kind of build it out bigger. And then the other thing is, since we're on top of this one, I have to also show the nose from above. And here we're under the nose, so it feels a little bit kind of mixed in terms of the multiple perspectives. So whenever we're above, we have to scoot the end of the nose below that proportion line. And then the difference is that I'm not going to see that underplane anymore. So we're going to have it come out, and I'm going to connect the keystone down to the cartilage. Keystone down. So here's the top of the nose. And then here, I think what happened with the inside of the nose is instead of dropping this back to give that plane for the side of the nose, you made a line that went more like this. Right? And so that you just left out one step, but that makes this feel really flat or kind of with less perspective. And then it also allowed for the eye to kind of creep over a little bit more. So let's add this one and then bring that down to the wing of the nose. So now this becomes the side of the nose here. And then give some context, let's put our eye in. And so for these where the head's turning away, I just show like whatever overlaps I can. So maybe there's like an overlap of the eye in the socket, and then maybe there's a little cheek. But I'm really trying to draw these in a way that produces a lot of T's. You know, like this is behind, socket's behind the eye, so there's my T. And then the cheek is in front of the eye, so there's another T. So I don't just kind of randomly draw it, and then this is behind the nose, so there's another little T there. This up is the corner of the eye, so that's going to help us kind of push this back a bit. And that gives us that room to put the little drop in the socket. And then when I get to my mouth, I have to do the same thing. So put my egg. We can set up our chin so we don't have to go back and do it later. But your mouth has to follow the same perspective. So it looks like I'm making him smile, but I'm just setting up a perspective ring. I want the lips to form on that. So when we do our M and W, we talked about making it feel like it's turning. Start with your center and then show more and less. So plus on this side. And I think when you get your lips, it don't look it's smiling too much. Less here. You did a pretty good job with that. And then the lower lip has to go the same. So it's going to mimic that perspective. So the goal just being to see if you can make the lips feel like they're situated on top of that dominant form. And then here's the underside where the muscle of the mouth kind of starts to weaken. The trapezoid shape that you always get there. And that's it. So I think really the biggest thing I noticed is just kind of stuff around the nose, and then making sure on this one specifically, that you maintain the perspective, which is always the one that you start with, the one that you give the brow to. Does that help?
Definitely. I think the large keystone was kind of throwing me off. And I remember for this one, at first I tried a model that was kind of, it looks sort of like it was from the underneath of the head, like his head was slightly tilted. So that's where I tried to do the nose, and then it was not looking right. So I think I put the nose to how I understood from past videos, but then it didn't match the rest of the head.
Right, that makes sense. Well, that's what these are, Q&As are for. I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah, thank you for your advice. And if anyone else has anything else they want to ask, go for it. Thank you for waiting.
I had a quick question about the hairline.
Yeah.
Well, in one of my drawings in number 7, the lower left, the hairline's a little bit different. It's not at the top. It goes down to where the ear is. Is that okay to do that, or should it stay at the top of the head?
Oh, are you talking about a drawing that's already here, or one that I haven't?
In one of my drawings that I did, that I uploaded.
You want me to grab it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then which one is it?
On number 7, the lower left.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I wouldn't drop it just because it's not in reference. I mean, I understand why you would because we're talking about the hairline, but we're not, or I'm not intending it to mean the actual hairline. The hairline to me means so let's put it up. Remember that the hairline isn't in reference to people's hair. It's just that that's the easiest place to look for what it is that we're trying to reference that's really an effect of the skull. So if this is a skull is we talked about isn't a ball. It's more of an egg that's really broad in the back and narrow in the front. So what I'm looking for when I mention the hairline is really the change in plane from the front of your face, so forehead more specifically, to the top of your skull. So it's more about identifying that separation. The hairline just happens to be a close visual reference, but that doesn't mean that I'm ever looking at the hair specifically to draw it. And what finding that area gives you is where the whole of the skull changes dramatically. So like everything on the top of your head is rounded and smooth. So like from this line up, which is my imaginary hairline that I always just go straight back with, I'm using that to find the difference in plane. And then when we get past this to the side of the head, all of this is really sheer and in some areas concave, sorry. So that's where we do our disc. And we only use the hairline to find where the top and bottom of that disc are. Right? By finding the nose and the hairline, you're creating the height of that cutout. So the hairline and the nose are giving you the size of the disc. The temple to the back of the head or brow to the back of the head give you the width of the disc. So those things. But if I were to use the hairline to kind of match the actual hairline, I would be looking for the shape of the hair and not for a feature to the skull. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Is there anybody else that has questions or anything that they'd like to have looked at before we wrap it up? Okay, well, thanks so much for all the great. Oh, is there a question?
Well, I was just gonna say that I see another line on where the cheeks are on this drawing. What is that? Is that the base of the nose?
On your drawing?
The drawing that you're doing right now.
Oh, I'm just drawing the skull.
Oh.
Yeah. The base of the nose, this is just the measurements.
Well, yeah, there was a dot next to the dot at the bottom of the ear, and I didn't know what that was for.
Yeah.
There's that, then there's a line to the right, and then there's another dot. I didn't know if we do that or not.
No, I don't. It's nothing. Nothing that should concern you. I'm not even really drawing our process right now. I'm just drawing the skull. So you can see a comparison based on what it is we're abstracting from. And because we were talking about qualities and features of the skull that then interpolated into our kind of basic approach with the hairline. So I just did the rest of this as the skull because I've drawn, I don't know, like already a bunch of head constructions. So just something different.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we can leave it there and I'll stop this week and recording and put it up on the Canvas if anybody would like to review a certain part of it. Remember that the homework is due Wednesday and the quiz is on Wednesday. The quiz will be live in the morning. Please remember to get to it before the day's end. And that's it. So if you have any extra questions, just go ahead and feel free to email me and I will see you guys next week.
Have a good day, Professor.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.